Welcome back, and let's start with our first segment for today, talking about the first edition of the Egyptian Forum for International Cooperation, which was inaugurated on Wednesday under the auspices of President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi. To discuss this important event in more details, we have the pleasure to have with us Dr. Youmn Hamaki, Professor of Economics at Shams University. Good morning, Doctor.
Good morning.
Doctor, before we talk about anything, let's talk about the importance of such an event that just came just in time.
Yes, actually, I believe that it came just in time. Why? Because the world is witnessing severe challenges post COVID-19. Still, we are actually in a new variant of COVID-19. We are witnessing severe impact of climate change as the temperature of the Earth is increasing significantly, affecting seriously a lot of phenomena that we can see all over the world, jeopardizing the life of people in different areas of the world. So all these events actually necessitate international cooperation. And from here it comes the importance of such a forum. Egypt nowadays has succeeded to build its resilient towards addressing COVID-19, as well as introducing Egypt in the world economy as a very active player in the area, not only within Africa, but with Arab countries, in partnership with Europe, and with all partners all over the world. From here it comes the importance of the position of Egypt nowadays to play a significant role to address such challenges, starting from climate change and how to cope with COVID-19. So I think from here it comes the importance of having to discuss all the matters and the issues and challenges confronting the world, and to how extent Egypt can play a significant role to address our challenges from one perspective. The main question to be raised here, to how extent Egypt is successful to rationalize and maximize benefit from international cooperation. We have a question mark regarding that, and we started actually to move in a very better way to address international cooperation. So it's a very important occasion to revise our situation regarding international cooperation, how to maximize benefit, how to address challenges from one perspective, from another, how Egypt can pose itself in the international level to play a significant role.
Right. Talking about the slogan of the forum itself, partnerships to achieve sustainable development. And definitely the key word is the sustainability of all what we are doing. And the president himself in the speech that was delivered, he mentioned all the challenges that we are facing right now. So if we are talking about solutions offered, or talking about means of cooperation among the countries, because now we are talking about that what we are talking about now, we are moving on with our vision 2030 and also the African vision for 2063.
Yes. This is a very good point. We have to cope with sustainable development. For the Egyptian case, we have our sustainable development goals and integrating such goals into our economic planning. So we have the vision of 2030 in Egypt, in which we are trying to incorporate the 17 goals of sustainable development into our economic development plan. And this is regarding Egypt, and we have another dimension which is African. So we have the vision of 2063, as President el-Sisi mentioned, and we have done very important effort towards how Egypt can be integrated into the African continent, to have projects for greener economy, as well as different mega project towards renewable energy and reducing emissions. So this is regarding the regional side. Regarding the international side, we have to incorporate into you know, the international efforts towards reducing the emission. We still have some countries dominating emissions in the world. On top of them, United States and China, but China in top front, and then United States. China is responsible for nowadays the largest percent of emission because of industrialization and so on. So we need to revise you know, the world as international cooperation. And I believe, Nashwa, that you know, that what we have as COVID-19 proved to large extent that no country can play individually. So, you know, the international cooperation becoming essential to address the challenges. You cannot address COVID-19 in individual way. We have seen to how extent that if one country is having the disease, it's going to be spread around the whole world, despite all efforts that have been taken in order to isolate countries. So from here it comes the meaning that nowadays the challenges are global, like climate change, for example. You know, the whole Earth is affected seriously by the repercussions of the climate change. So globalization nowadays has been changed from the meaning of just using resources and enlarging, you know, enlarging profits for some countries and gains from some countries on the cost of other countries. And from here it comes the gap between developing and developed countries. And even inside developed countries, there is nowadays large gaps between poor and wealthy people. And from here it comes that the G20s, they have decided to you know, address a taxation for multinationals, specifically those on top of multinationals that have gained quite well after COVID-19. So, you know, in order to address the problem of tax havens, we can notice that lately major multinationals, they refer, or some of them, they refer to tax haven in different areas in order to avoid taxation. And from here it comes that the gap between rich and poor, even inside developed countries, has been widened severely. And this gap actually is existing between developing and developed countries. So we cannot achieve or address challenges with such gaps. We cannot address nowadays a disease like COVID-19 or the climate change without international cooperation and trying to address such a gap.
So if we can say or describe the situation as that we have a coin with double face, one side political issues, the other side economic issues, never to be separated. I'm talking about the current situation in the African continent, for example, and all the achievements that took place during the past couple of years and right now. I think things changed. Yes, we are facing still more challenges, but definitely things changed a lot.
Yes, you know, the dilemma, Nashwa, regarding climate change and the green economy is referring to, like, I'll give you a very small example. Nowadays, if you want to reduce emission, and you know that cars are a very important, responsible way for emissions in different countries. Let's take Egypt. It's a major, you know, transportation is one of the major reason of emission in Egypt. So nowadays, all the world nowadays thinking about electric cars, and there are very strategic plans towards, you know, replacing our traditional fuel, natural fuel as using traditional fuel by electric cars. So in order to do that, and I am, as an economist, have done a lot of studies regarding that issue, the countries should put incentives for producers and consumers as well. So you cannot introduce such, enhancing greener economy without having a role of the government and without having incentives and policies to address such issues. So if you don't have, enough finance, and this is one of the issues, the very important issues that has been raised in the forum, is how to finance, sustainable development. The ways of finance are very important to be addressed properly. Why? Because when we have in 2015 the Sustainable Development Goals in Paris Summit, developed countries have recommended that it's going to give developing countries $100 billion for supporting them to address and to be able to implement the Sustainable Development Goals. But after that, we have, the histories that United States, President Trump has been withdrawn from such an agreement, and then Biden returned back. So the issue is to how extent, international cooperation in favor of supporting developing countries towards the projects that may address climate change. And this is the crux of what we are talking about. It has been mentioned by one of the experts in the forum, mentioning that when we can have 1% of GDP of the whole world dedicated to climate change and to finance for climate change, without that you cannot do anything. We have a very good experience of Germany. Germany has done quite well regarding addressing climate change by trying to, replace sources of energy by the renewable energy, despite that for solar energy, for example, Germany is not rich with the ways to do that, but still exerting effort and financing despite that. And this is one of the main issues nowadays raised in the elections, the German election. How to use renewable energy, to what extent this is going to affect, incentives for investment. So sometimes you can find a trade-off between having sustainable financial project, and from other way, trying to find ways of finance to support such projects.
Talking about this important international forum taking place in Egypt, and also talking about Egypt's achievements in this respect, because Egypt achieved a lot when we talk about the sustainable development, when we talk about the mega projects, the economic reform program, many things that are moving in parallel. This is the most important part.
Yes, it's a very important part for Egypt to rationalize using, international cooperation for, the development nowadays going on in Egypt. And I believe that our Minister of International Cooperation is exerting quite a very important effort towards that by, try to harmonize effort, not only because what we mean by international cooperation, it's not only, the international organizations, World Bank and the IMF and all international, bodies responsible for international development and cooperation, like the African Bank for Economic Development, the IBRD, the European Bank for Reconstruction. All these, institutions are exerting efforts toward, enlarging opportunities for developing countries for more development. So what we have to do as Egypt, we are trying to rationalize our using of such international cooperation, specifically by specifying our priorities. We nowadays we are working in the large project of decent life, in which we are trying to enhance development in all rural areas, addressing more than 57% of our population. So trying to prioritize what are our needs regarding economic empowerment of poverty, like President Sisi has mentioned in later conference, mentioning that our way to address poverty is economic empowerment. So what projects can help us to do that? Regarding Takaful and Karama, how to rationalize, the social security net, that it should be quite emphasized on during this period of transformation for the Egyptian economy, in which, you are going with still high rate of poverty. You have to take care of the poor people. Nowadays we have still 29.7% of population, according to our statistics, are poor. So all these goals with increasing percentage of the population growth, representing a very important challenge for us. The participation of women nowadays can play a significant role. Our women, they don't participate as we want in our economic development. According to statistics, the economic participation of women is still quite minimal compared to other countries of the world. So this is what we have to do, to prioritize what we need from international organization and international cooperation, to put the economic side in top front so that we can use our resources efficiently to improve the capabilities of people. So human resources, and I believe part of the forum is concentrating, I think the last part of the forum concentrating of how to build human capital and human resources. So this is essential for our countries, and I believe it should be in top front and priority. So I believe that this should be quite well. But from my point of view, and during my experience being a member in Shura Council, I believe that building a very strong system of monitoring and evaluation can play a significant role, because we used to use such fund coming from international organization in not a rational way, which means that it's not results-based management. So you can take a lot of money, and at the end the results are not as we put in the beginning. So the results-based management can help us to achieve our goals from using such funds, and from here we can rationalize our using international cooperation for the benefit of the majority of population, rather than benefiting a group or two groups of the population.
If we are talking about the cooperation among the African countries in building human capital in particular,
yes,
and talking about how far we can also benefit, as you mentioned, from the international participation,
yes,
and the transparency. Let's say now Egypt is very transparent, putting all the challenges in front even of the Egyptian citizen or anyone, yes, who is just talking or criticizing, and being very clear and let's say sharp on the decision that we have to follow this and this and this, because other than this things will be deteriorated.
Yes.
So now everyone is supporting, everyone is moving and aware of the current situation. So how far are we taking benefit of the international participation in this event, especially when it comes to building human capitals in the region?
I believe that what we have to do is to enhance our cooperation regarding that side, which means that we have very important ways to enhance the role of universities in the African continent, how universities can increase the relation. Nowadays, universities, and I am a professor in university, we have done a lot of efforts toward addressing a new generation of universities. Universities nowadays are not just confined to teaching students, but they are trying to be part of the developmental society and addressing the goals of the society. So I believe by having universities as a main player in achieving development goals in the African continent, and by exchanging experiences and exchanging students so that we can benefit from our experience, I believe this can play a significant role, as well as regarding students in in the primary and the preparatory as well. So exchanging student, addressing challenges, can play a significant role. Another part, which is R&D, research and development. Nowadays we still, as African countries, importing our technology. So in order to build our technology as African continent, and we have a lot of research centers that are not used efficiently. So this should become a very important role, how to exchange and build, identity for the African continent to have its technology relevant to their situation and the needs of the people. So I believe
and the
this
technical
can
education
be,
as well.
Yes, this can be, how to put your priorities at first that can be relevant to your situation and your challenges, and how to be addressed properly in sort of type of cooperation among African countries. And we have a lot of institutions actually nowadays in the African continent that can help to do that. So hopefully that we can use, because we have, as economists, some studies proving that the African continent has received 3 times what the European countries have taken after the Second World War in a Marshall Plan. Despite that, we can compare how European countries nowadays are becoming and how the African countries are still in poverty and underdevelopment. So this is proving to you that it's not a matter of donations. It's not a matter of just giving, international aid. It's a matter of how to be used properly for the benefit of the people.
Right. And let me say here what is really very, very important, that we have seen all the steps taken by Egypt, for example, when it comes to the climate change as a leading role in the region. Yes. And this is the most important part because, as you mentioned, I remember we talked before about, for example, what we achieved in renewable energy as well. And we used to talk a long time ago about how it is important, and now we can see it on the ground,
yes,
whether we're talking about renewable energy and again, human capital, as you mentioned. And I think it's not about the capital, the funding itself, as you mentioned, but it is about building the human capital. Yes. This is the infrastructure of the mega project, I believe so.
Of course, I agree with you. And actually, when you build, it's not just by enhancing, the capability and the skills of human capital, but mostly important to the ethics. Because without ethics, you cannot build countries.
Right. How do you see let's say, the challenges that we're facing right now and the priorities to be, just if I'm going to put the priorities and getting out of this forum, there are certain steps that we must follow. We always say these events are very, very important, but the most important part also that they are paving the way for us, and we have to continue.
Yes. From my point of view, actually, I believe that one of the most important topics that should be discussed, how, we can reach a way to monitor the impact of international donations, which means that what I have witnessed from revising a lot of such international cooperations, that actually how to audit such international donation coming, it's just by revising invoices. You are spending such money in specific area, what is the invoice? It's not by that, it's by the results. what were the goals of such a donation.
The milestones.
And to how yes, and how to set the indicators necessary for monitoring and evaluation. How to put, you know, a very important system of monitoring in, you know, different stages of the project, so that you can be sure at the end of the project that the results are achieved. So I believe, from my point of view, we need to revise completely the system of monitoring and evaluation by international organizations, so that to be sure that these funds are going to the real beneficiaries, and to be sure that at the end they are reaching their goals.
Right. Dr. Youmn Hamaki, Professor of Economics at Shams University, of course, always a pleasure having you with us on the show. Right, moving on to a quick break, then we'll be back with more on The Breakfast Show.